Hello everyone tuning in. This is the Contemporary Art Modern Project, or many of you know us just by the Camp Gallery. And today I'm going to kind of just be doing a really informal interview with the star of our newest exhibition, Laeti Adam-Rabel.
Or Laeti.
Or Laeti. And the new exhibition, Origin Not Found, that'll still be on kind of view from, we started at the beginning of this month on February 3rd, and we'll keep going until February 26th. If anyone would like to come during that time, we're still in the North Miami space, as always, that you can always find us or directly contact us. But I wanted to kind of give this opportunity, as I'm the curator of the show, to just have a sit down and talk with Laeti and kind of discuss what she's been thinking about and kind of practicing with all of her art as of late. So I don't know if you want to do a little introduction, since I've said a lot of words about like what you're kind of specialize in as an artist.
As an artist, I specialize in a little bit of everything. So I dabble in different media. I like just working from sculpture to painting, acrylics, or photography and photo montage with Photoshop and video. So yeah, I'm a little all over the place because I get bored easily. So, and I have a lot to say, so I feel like I need the different media to really get through to what I want to say.
I mean, it's no stranger to a lot of our artists that they've kind of explored different media. They're traditionally painters or drawers or photographers, and they're trying out new media. Earlier in the last year, we had even Cotan Fernandez here, who's traditionally a painter, but he was promoting sculpture, and just like you, he was showing off new video work for his exhibition. So it's kind of no alien or stranger to be able to show off so many kind of multidisciplinary artists, kind of engaging and immersing with new media, especially when we give them the opportunity to present it in a space like this.
Right.
So I really wanted to ask and start this all off with, because we obviously have so many different media that we kind of work with, especially with you. What becomes kind of your main motivation behind working with so many kind of vastness? You're talking about a lot of different just topics, exploring a lot of different visuals. So what is your primary motivation behind your work?
So my motivation comes from different places, and that's partly why I use so many different media, because depending on what I want to delve into as an issue, that might dictate what medium I use. So I'm a mother of a 3-year-old, so I'm a new mother fairly. So I talk about a lot of issues around being a mother and feminine issues, and so I use softer materials when I'm dealing with those issues, kind of like what you can see here with a lot of yarn and like felting and flocking, but also sometimes I talk about sea level rising and global warming, and I feel like there's a real urgency to talk about those topics, and it's a topic that has been dear to my heart ever since I was like in elementary school in Haiti. I went to a French school where we were exposed to like very early on to what the issues that we're dealing with on Earth, our only planet that we have, to really talk about these issues and activate ourselves to protect our environment. So that's another issue I deal with, and for that, like I use a lot of recycled materials, like plastic bottle caps, plastic bags, mesh produce bags, and also I mix that with clay and whatnot. So that's another way that the topics I deal with inform the media that I use. And then with my photography, sometimes I like to create alter egos and alternate environments, and also talk about the power that we have, especially as women and women of color, and also teaching her power to my daughter. So with those topics, like sometimes I use more the photo montage with Photoshop to create like fantastic environments and worlds.
Yeah, so much of your work is, you're not bouncing from topic to topic. You're engaging with like what's most present and most pressing to you on so many different things of being a mother, especially so much of the recent discussion and topic and climate change in the Black Lives Matter movement and all that kind of embraces that. So much of your work kind of spans this wider range.
Right.
Oh no, you're good. We always need water here, so if we could get one. So there's no need. We always here we roll with the punches.
Right.
So whenever we kind of are discussing so much of kind of your catalog of work, it's an embracement of, it's not shying away from so many of these things. You're confronting things kind of fully head on.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
Kind of, it's a confrontational sort of view. You're not letting people like shy away from so many of these things that they have to directly approach. You're confronting them with the gaze. You're confronting them with the subjects directly on. So it's so interesting, and I'm actually glad you brought up like the flocking nature, especially of like the piece behind us, what happens in the kitchen. So much of your work has to deal with, especially texture. You've been including so many found objects, so many different kind of varieties of materials. We're showing off a lot of your pieces now that are including fabric and the textile arts, which we've loved to embrace and talk about. So what do you kind of see? I described it as so much of art we're told not to touch ever, but you like almost embrace the opposite, where you rely so heavily on texture that it makes you want to reach out and touch it. Is there a reason for that kind of focus?
Actually, that's a very good observation. Not that I want, and my work is not really like work that you interact with so much. Like it's not made that way, but the nature of the materiality of it is very innate. When I was a little girl, my grandmother, my mother's mother, used to always tell me in French, voir sans toucher n'est pas voir, which means seeing without touching is not seeing, which is the direct opposite of what my mother used to tell me. So I feel like I love to play with materials, and it's just something I grew up with, and I feel like there's just this playful nature, but also this importance of the materials that we use to tell the story the way we want it to be told. Because I think, for example, the mermaid, the life-size sculpture mermaid, Awaiting Consciousness, wouldn't be the same piece in a different material. I don't think she would work as well, for example, with in marble or metal. I felt like she needed to be made of recycled plastic bags because, first, the plastic bags have this capability that I found as I was working with this piece, that you can make the plastic bags look like old tissue, like biological tissue that's kind of like falling apart or being mummified or fossilized. And it's amazing how you can transform what the material really is to make it look like something else. So there's this very tactile nature to the plastic bags but you might not be able to tell really what it is. But because it's about pollution and our, really abusing the oceans, and I use the mermaid as the icon, and all those plastic and recyclable materials, which really are, really the only way to deal with this issue is to not use as much. So whether things are recyclable or not is not really the issue at the end of the day. But I felt like those were the materials I needed to use. So anyway, To answer your question, this is where it comes from. Like from a very young age, I was encouraged by my grandmother to really play and touch things. So
so much of that kind of tactile atmosphere, even with awakening consciousness, if we think of a modern day incarnation of a mermaid, she wouldn't rise from the sea covered in seaweed with shells and kind of just that stereotypical thing. She would rise out covered in all the waste that we've filled the ocean with. It would be a tragic sight, but it's a sight that still nonetheless needs to be addressed. There's only so much we can do to reclaim and kind of withdraw so much that we've put out into the ocean. Some of those things are almost unrecoverable.
Right.
So, like you said, eliminating that need to use so much, to dump so much now, is really vital. And it embraces kind of so many of your work. But as a tangential question, you've now embraced so many different materials, and you talked about that tactile nature. But you've now recently transitioned to video. So it almost seems like the opposite. We're getting to show off 3 brand new kind of videos for the first time, we've been able to exhibit them, right?
Right. It's the first time I'm exhibiting them. However, they're not all new. And the thing with the way I work is that I work with different series in parallel. So I don't really work on one series and go to another and then, oh, this is what I'm working on now. And because they're topics that I'm always dealing with. So sometimes I'll feel like I'll wake up in the morning and I'm like, okay, I need to add this piece that I just thought of to fossilization. And this is what it's going to look like, and this is what I'm going to use to make it. But some days I'll wake up and I'll be like, I need to do something for displaced, and it needs to be very like biological feeling, but also very like kind of like I'm losing the word right now, but kind of like this thing that's really coming out of you, just.
Yeah. You said like even in the displaced piece, regurgitating.
Right. So there's the regurgitation, because displaced is about being displaced from your original home. So it's a story. It's the story of immigrants, which I think a lot of us, if not everyone, mostly can relate to. It's about like fitting in and not being able to fit in, not assimilating, and or some people are able to assimilate, but in my case, like how much can you really assimilate? And is it even a good thing to really assimilate? So there's that like very innate like kind of stress and fight, the conflict, yeah, that you really feel like sometimes you want to kind of like regurgitate the new culture, and sometimes you want to regurgitate the old culture, and it's like you never really fit in one or the other. Like I wouldn't fit in Haiti if I went right now. I mean, I hate to say that because Haiti is very dear to me, but if I went right now, it's a whole different world than what I can muster to remember of a country. And so like sometimes it's like, and you know, when you come here, you want to kind of like assimilate and forget about some of the things that you knew as a little girl growing up in Haiti or wherever. So it's like the only thing you can do in order to assimilate is to really erase that part of you, and that gives you that very like vile feeling, almost of like a self-hatred sometimes. So that's part of like the displace with it's kind of like these entrails kind of like just regurgitating yourself. If that's graphic enough. Yeah.
But it's kind of so much of what I based the initial kind of conversation of the exhibition about. So much of your work is directly confronting that conflict and showing off that there are both sides. It is a double-edged sword. Mm-hmm. There are complete aspects to assimilation that a modern society kind of just needs to be able to function, mm-hmm, because people are scared of change. Mm-hmm. People, mm-hmm, are scared of the new. People are scared of the alien. It's just a kind of modern aspect of life. Mm-hmm. It's an unfortunate one, but so much of kind of in inherent culture of being an immigrant. My parents are Cuban and Puerto Rican, but I kind of got almost nothing of that until my kind of later life. Once I entered in high school, I started really embracing my culture. I looked back to it. I started realizing so many of the things that I was missing from there. And almost immediately at the same time, as soon as I started doing that, my sister got the opportunity to be one of the first members of our family to go back to Cuba after us leaving. So that was a really like important movement, and it mattered so much to not only like my family, my sister, me, but to a lot of just the tangential kind of other relatives that we had that had no experience of what it is to be missing a culture that you've almost even never been a part of. So it is a topic to kind of have discuss. It's not one, we often talk about the financial or the kind of displacement of being an immigrant, but there are so many kind of issues around it too. It does become almost like a homesickness, even if you almost have never lived there or had to experience it. But kind of switching that topic, we just actually talked about the Displaced series and kind of the topics around. For the Displaced series, many of the works you finished at the end of 2021 and going into 2022, and there's a distinct shift in especially the color that you use. Many of the works that we're showing in the exhibition have kind of more neutral tones, but as they kind of creep into the 2022 year, we start to see greens, reds, the collaborative work with your daughter having purples. Even that color choice will kind of impact you. Do you see this color change affecting you? Kind of your pieces going forward as well?
I definitely have thought about going with more color in my work, and of course it is not an accident. It is deliberate. You know, obviously, like I was saying, the reds and the greens, kind of like complementary colors, because there's that push and pull, and that inside us, that fight. And of course, the red is very like biological. And actually, I usually don't do red, and my daughter loves red, and the only red I like is red cars. I don't like anything else red.
All of us. A red car is something special.
Right. So, but I do feel like I needed to get the neutrals. And of course, the brown, it's not just neutrals in general. I've been working with a lot of browns, and that was very intentional because like a lot of the pieces are about from a series called On the Beauty of Brown. And then it's obviously about colorism and racism, or so-called racism, because like obviously race isn't a thing, but so let's just say colorism. So I wanted to work with those neutrals to talk about the beauty of brown and black, and of course black. There are people who are really dark brown, but really melanin is brown, so we're brown. And I feel like there's so much that still needs to be said. So I'm not saying I'm totally shifting from the neutrals, because I still need to say a lot about why is it that a black dress is considered elegant, but yet when you talk about a black person, then it's a negative thing. So why the duality? Yeah. And brown, why is brown the last color that most kids want to play with in crayon boxes? Like, so there's a lot to be said about those colors. So I'm not done with that, but I am getting into more colors. So
I mean, the exploration of palette is like, it's immensely interesting to me, because it doesn't, like you said, dictate a shift in topic.
Right.
It's kind of just I'd say like a side pass. You're exploring this just new avenue of color theory. It's not just an embracement of the reds and greens, as you say. It's an embracement of kind of what they stand for in your life, and you're integrating more pieces. You're integrating more of your daughter, her loves, her kind of passions into your work. It is a mixing of both. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to give up one thing for the other. And so many of And on the topic of your daughter, so many of the kind of stories of her, especially, have kind of bled into your pieces, and in pieces like Mother and Child, that series, the series that we have with Harness, you're having her kind of integrated more, and so many of her stories now become part of your work, and it quite literally becomes her story.
Yeah.
Is there stories that you're still wanting to explore even going forward?
Sure. There are a lot of topics that I still need to delve into. And speaking of my daughter, she's very wise, and the kids don't get enough credit like for how wise they are. And we really need to listen more to them. And like she's teaching me so much. Like just the other day, for example, I've had a fear of highways. And she told me the other day, Mommy, you don't have to be afraid of the highway. There's nothing to be afraid of. And I was like, okay, you're right. So like a couple of days later, I did get on 95. And she was in the car and she's like, Mommy, you got on the highway. And I was like, yeah, you told me I didn't need to be afraid, so I'm on the highway. So it's like she's really an amazing artist and a wealth of wisdom. And she's helping me also to delve into things that I've had from my childhood, like a lot of trauma, and that I'm also trying not to pass on to her and be healthier with working with these things and doing better as much as possible as a parent. So yeah, she's definitely informing my art.
So much of it is reflections of yourself, reflections of your family, reflections of so much of what you're going through. A lot of your work is directly you, more so than kind of anything else. So it is kind of just, it's not only like enlightening, it like puts a smile on my face to be able to see so much of kind of your personality like bleed through to your work. You're putting your blood on the paper. You want people to see you as much as the topics that you're discussing, because it's important to have a person behind the lens, the brush, the pencil, whatever. So it's wonderful to be able to see so much of your art embrace that like kind of artistic nature, the discussion that you have to have with it, even the topics that you directly approach, and not fearing kind of any judgment here and thereof. It's been a wonderful exhibition to have and be able to display and be able to curate, because you have such a wide breadth of work to be able to just form these discussions around and be able to talk about.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having our little conversation. So actually, our kind of lovely thing that we have here is that we have a live audience also being able to view and kind of participate in the interview. So if anyone kind of has any questions, we'd like feel free to ask any of them to Laeti, ask any of me. We have one.
Yeah, so I have a question from our live, and it's if you have any advice for artists starting out in their career.
So any advice for artists starting out in their career from Laeti?
That's a very big question. The one thing that comes to mind is don't give up. Like there's a lot of adversity, and sometimes in our culture, we're not encouraged to pursue artistic careers. And all I can say is that if you don't believe in your own art, if you don't believe in yourself, nobody's going to. And I think I've been very stubborn. I'm lucky because I have actually, nobody does it alone either. I have a very supportive husband and a daughter who are there. But also, I've also had, confrontations with other people or with the culture sometimes, and there are bills to be paid, there are things to do, and there are other priorities in life. But you have to really want it, and you have to stick to it. So yeah, at the end of the day, I'd say just don't give up and keep your sketchbook and keep doing it. And yeah, if you're serious about the work, the opportunities will come to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, one, for that question. Do we have any other questions that people would like to ask? Oh, we have one question from the little one. What would you like to ask?
I wanted to know, but she asked, why does mommy not like to wear red dresses?
So, someone asked, why does mommy not like to wear red dresses for Laeti?
That is a good question, and I think that's a question that mommy needs to delve into. Mommy hasn't really thought about that much, but I think it's something mommy will have to start to work with, and like maybe mommy will start to wear red a little more. Maybe I'll start with red lipstick. Yeah.
Move your way up.
Yes, love. Okay. All right. Okay. So mommy will wear a red dress one of these days.
So, if there's anything else, or if we'd kind of like to tie it all up, thanks everyone for being able to tune in. Not only the people watching through, but everyone visiting the exhibition today. That, of course, it still runs Origin Not Found until the 26th of the month. And we're constantly switching out exhibitions every month, so we're plenty glad to be able to give Letitia her solo show and be able to show off so many of her works. Oh, we actually had one more?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this person says, I find many of these works remind me of ancient murals in the Mediterranean, and they speak to the passing of time. Can you speak to this?
To the passing of
Time.
So that many of the pieces remind them of murals in the Mediterranean, and they speak about the passing of time. So would you like to kind of put a comment on that?
So interestingly, there is a time, the fourth dimension, in these pieces, and even in the fossilization, it's talking about like the future as it will be if we don't act in the present. So there's definitely time involved in it, and of course I'm using these plastic bags and fossilization as like the archaeological aspects of the art. So there's definitely that, and as I'm looking, like some of the smaller heads I do, they look like they might be like from like a ruin, or like small objects or artifacts that you could find. So there's definitely that, and I am a bit of a history buff. That was one thing that I enjoyed when I was in school, was history class, and I even have a piece which is made to look, it's a photography piece that's made to look like a page from a history book of a layout of different artifacts, and it's called Artifact Layout, actually. So that also speaks of time, and I was thinking of like what you might find in an excavation site, and how that gets laid out for everyone to see. So yeah, there's definitely that, the ancient world, and the passing of time.
Yeah. Good. So we'll just make one quick pass through. We're all set? All right. So
Thank you.
thank you everyone again for tuning in so much. Thank you, Laeti, for your exhibition and for sitting down with us to talk. And I once again say thank you to everyone kind of participating and viewing in on this. And of course, still, if you'd like to come see the exhibition until the 26th, we're always open Tuesday through Saturday. If you'd like to, in North Miami, of course. So please always stay tuned for the rest of kind of our interviews with all the artists and for any of the exhibitions. And thank you so much for stopping by.